At the dawn of the 18th century, the land that would become the United States was a patchwork of colonies. It was a world far removed from the global dominance we associate with America today. But how did this collection of frontier settlements transform into a superpower? A nation capable of shaping global events, influencing economies, and projecting military might across the world? The story of America's rise to power is a tale of ambition, conflict, innovation, and resilience. It's a story that unfolds over centuries, marked by defining moments and pivotal decisions. And to understand how America became a superpower, we need to trace the steps that led from colonial obscurity to global preeminence. The journey began in 1776, when 13 British colonies declared independence. The American Revolution wasn't just a rebellion against British rule. It was a bold experiment in democracy. The Founding Fathers envisioned a nation built on the principles of liberty and self-governance, but achieving this vision required more than idealism. The Revolutionary War tested the fledgling nation's resolve. Against the world's most powerful empire, the odds seemed insurmountable. Yet with the help of allies like France and Spain, America secured its independence in 1783. The Treaty of Paris not only ended the war, but also gave the United States vast territories stretching to the Mississippi River. This was the first major step in the expansion that would define America's rise. But independence was only the beginning. The United States was a fragile union with deep divisions between states and a weak central government under the Articles of Confederation. The adoption of the U.S. Constitution in 1787 created a stronger federal government, laying the groundwork for a unified nation capable of growth and expansion. In the 19th century, America's trajectory was defined by a concept known as manifest destiny, the belief that the United States was destined to expand across the continent. This belief drove westward expansion as settlers moved into new territories in search of land and opportunity. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803, under President Thomas Jefferson, doubled the size of the United States, adding vast lands from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. This single transaction marked one of the greatest land acquisitions in history. But expansion wasn't without conflict. The displacement of Native American tribes, often through violent means, and the war with Mexico in 1846 to 1848 underscored the darker side of manifest destiny. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the Mexican-American War and added modern-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas to the United States. With the acquisition of these territories, America was now a continental power. By the mid-19th century, the United States stretched from coast to coast with abundant natural resources, fertile land, and vast potential. Yet this expansion brought new challenges, particularly the question of slavery, which threatened to tear the nation apart. The Civil War from 1861 to 1865 was a pivotal moment in American history. It was a fight for the soul of the nation, whether it would remain divided by slavery or united under the principles of liberty. The Union's victory preserved the nation and led to the abolition of slavery, but the war came at a tremendous cost. Over 600,000 lives were lost, and much of the South lay in ruins. Despite the devastation, the post-war period, known as Reconstruction, set the stage for economic transformation. The United States experienced rapid industrialization, fueled by innovations like the steam engine, railroads, and telegraph. Cities like New York, Chicago, and Pittsburgh became industrial powerhouses, attracting immigrants from around the world. By the late 19th century, America was becoming an economic giant. Its steel, coal, and oil industries dominated global markets, and its population swelled with waves of immigrants seeking the American dream. The rise of corporations like Standard Oil and Carnegie Steel symbolized the country's growing industrial might. But industrialization also brought challenges: labor unrest, economic inequality, and political corruption. Yet these challenges were part of the growing pains of a nation on the brink of global influence. The Spanish-American War in 1898 marked America's first foray into global affairs. The war was sparked by the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor and fueled by sensationalist media coverage. The United States defeated Spain in just a few months, gaining control of territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. For the first time, America was no longer just a continental power. It had overseas possessions. This marked the beginning of America's role as a global player. As the 20th century dawned, America's economic power continued to grow. By 1914, the United States had the largest economy in the world, surpassing Great Britain. But it was World War I that truly propelled America onto the global stage. When World War I broke out in 1914, the United States initially remained neutral. But by 1917, events like the sinking of the Lusitania and the Zimmerman telegram pushed America into the conflict. President Woodrow Wilson framed the war as a fight to make the world safe for democracy. America's entry into the war was a turning point. The influx of U.S. troops and resources tipped the balance in favor of the Allies, leading to Germany's defeat in 1918. At the Versailles Peace Conference, Wilson played a key role, advocating for the League of Nations. Yet America's global ambitions were tempered by isolationism in the interwar years. The Senate rejected the League of Nations, and the country focused on domestic issues like the Great Depression. But even during this period of introspection, America's industrial base and innovation continued to grow, setting the stage for its future dominance. World War II was the definitive moment in America's rise to superpower status. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States was thrust into a global conflict. The war mobilized the nation's economy and people on an unprecedented scale. America became the arsenal of democracy, supplying the Allies with weapons, vehicles, and resources. Industries converted to war production, creating millions of jobs and pulling the country out of the Great Depression. But America's involvement wasn't just economic, it was also military. The U.S. played a decisive role in both the European and Pacific theaters, from D-Day to the Battle of Midway. By the end of the war, the United States had emerged as one of the world's two dominant powers, alongside the Soviet Union. The development and use of the atomic bomb symbolized America's technological and military superiority. The post-war period solidified this dominance, with the United States spearheading the creation of international institutions like the United Nations and the International Monetary Fund. The Cold War defined the second half of the 20th century. America and the Soviet Union were locked in a battle for ideological and geopolitical supremacy. While the two superpowers never engaged in direct conflict, their rivalry played out in proxy wars, espionage, and the space race. The Marshall Plan, launched in 1948, showcased America's ability to wield economic power for political ends. By providing billions in aid to rebuild Europe, the United States not only helped its allies recover, but also curbed the spread of communism. During this era, America's military might expanded dramatically. The establishment of NATO in the development of a vast nuclear arsenal underscored its role as the leader of the Western Bloc. Culturally, America's influence grew as well. Hollywood, jazz, and consumer goods became symbols of American soft power, shaping global perceptions of the United States. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the United States was left as the world's sole superpower. The end of the Cold War ushered in a period of American dominance known as the unipolar moment. The 1990s saw America leading efforts to promote globalization, with institutions like the World Trade Organization expanding free trade. The Internet revolution, driven by American companies, transformed the global economy and communication. But this period wasn't without challenges. The September 11th attacks in 2001 marked a turning point, leading to the War on Terror and prolonged conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. These wars tested America's resolve and resources, raising questions about its global strategy. Today, the United States remains a superpower, but its dominance is increasingly challenged. The rise of China, shifting alliances, and domestic polarization have created new uncertainties. Yet America's economic, military, and cultural influence remains unparalleled. The story of America's rise to power is far from over. It's a story of reinvention and resilience, driven by the ideals of democracy and innovation. As history shows, the forces that built America's superpower status are still shaping its future. So the question remains, can the United States adapt to the challenges of a changing world and maintain its place at the top? Only time will tell.